The thing we want to talk to you today mostly about was Instagram, because it is probably the most talked about and seems to be the most popular platform for influencer marketing these days.
From my point of view, I think, brands should the whole follower count thing has been, I think, an unfortunate proxy for meaning. When I look at how brands are using the follower count, I think they're really focused on a quantity thing, and it's again that same remapping of their old expectations, right? Like, how do we bring the advertising world and bring it and map it into the universe that we've always been accustomed to and happy with? And I think now everyone realized they got to hike it out of the woods, and we've got to figure out how to have quality relationships with people, and how to do the hard thing at scale, not the easy thing at scale.
And that actually brings us to our first truth, which is reach, which is what we've been using as sort of the result, or how we compensate people. That was a subject of an article this morning in Digiday about how some of the platforms are changing their payment compensation because they've been paying influencers based on reach, and they're shifting more to engagement models and more to sort of results-oriented models. And that's, in fact, the first truth, is that reach is really a delivery metric. It's not a performance metric. So in order to understand how things are performing and how well any influencer does, but particularly Instagram, we need to look at the engagement with the content, not just how many followers they have.
If I was to argue that there was anything else that we might want to think about, my good friend Brian and I, net promoter score is sort of like this thing that's been around. Like, what's the equivalent on social, right? Like, where does all of the other conversational, sort of side effects come into play, and how do we measure that, right? And I think it really speaks to sort of the attribution problem that we still see, in social to a large degree.
If I was going to give a piece of advice to our anyone who's working with Instagram influencers, is to make sure that they're actually converting their profile to a business profile, so you actually have access to any of those metrics.
Yeah, I think you also hit on another interesting point, or an important point of this conversation, is the professionalism of the influencer themselves, right? And a lot of brands, I think one of the sort of reasons they don't want to work directly with influencers often, and they prefer working through an MCN or someone else, is that they want to be buffeted from sort of maybe the inexperience, right? Mm-hmm. Or the disorganization that may exist at those other levels. And
influencer. And that's the other truth is, when you're thinking about your platform should always follow your purpose. And the other interesting piece of news that hit today was eMarketer released its sort of big roundup on the global influencer market. And while Instagram was one of the top platforms, it certainly wasn't the only platform. Just because Instagram is a popular platform and it's a great platform for certain kinds of content and certain kinds of brands, doesn't mean it's the right place for every influencer. It's not to be on the platform, is that the right platform?
One of the most important things that I sort of always tell people is that it's not platforms, they're people on the other side of that. And when it comes to any kind of information or content, different people have different appetites, right? And so, some consumers or some customers want to prefer information, say audio, video, photos, whatever it may be. You have to understand that first and foremost, but then each of those platforms, as they are, right, have their own sensibility. I think brands suffer a lot in this domain is translating themselves into those mediums, right, in a way that is native and sort of authentic to that platform, as well as to themselves.
That's actually a really good point about developing a task or the storytelling opportunities that are optimized for the platform. You don't want to just do an Instagram story. You want to use it effectively, and you tell your story in the right way within that format, looking at whether people are actually having that conversation, and then creating an opportunity to tell the story of your brand within the context of that opportunity.
The difference is actually not necessarily the toolkit, it's the people.
Brands really need to be thinking about not just first their purpose, what are they trying to achieve, then their platform, where is it the best place to tell the story, and then the last thing we think about is, who's going to help us tell it. Okay, so my myth for you all today is that organic, in quotes, social content is better than influencer marketing because the person sharing it wasn't compensated for his or her work. And this is a myth that I would love to kill dead, because the idea that it has to truly come from the heart, and we wouldn't have all this fraud and problems if we just got people to share things authentically, because the truth is there are very, very few brands that can incite that kind of authentic, spontaneous sharing. We really need to prime the pump a little bit with something, because organic is just as likely to be, organic material, if you get my drift, and a negative comment as it is to be positive. Get over the idea that you shouldn't be compensating. Just let's make sure we compensate people correctly.
Brands also just have their own expectations around quality, of the content itself. And, you just don't always get that if you don't work with the people who might basically do this for a living. And guess what? Now they're professionals or they're prosumers or whatever it may be, that it's their job. Right. And it's not to say that they're selling their opinion or swaying their opinion per se. Right. It's just that this is what they do for work. No.
Start with people who are passionate about your brand, but compensate them for the work they do. Mind your social feeds for those organic mentions that they may happen once in a while. I mean, you can't count on
them. It's good directionality.
You can't count on
right? Like, if it's happening, like more and more organic is happening, that's a great signal potentially, right? But could also be for the wrong reason. So it's important to know.
Whether it's organic content that you see, that if you're waiting for someone to say something nice, you can't count on that. But when it does happen, that could be someone that would be a good person to work with. And then, don't be afraid to boost your best performing content. Take the stuff that does work well, invest in some stuff that does work well, and then do a lot more with it. Put it in your ads, put it in your website, put it everywhere. So those are our two truths and a myth for this week. Finally, I just wanted to give a word of personal caution, because the other thing that's been happening on Instagram that we've noticed a lot is people dying for that great photo, whether it's getting bitten by a shark or falling off a building or, falling down a waterfall. And, you don't want, nor do you want the influencers working with you to become the Darwin Award winners in the Instagram category. So we need to make sure that we don't ask people to do things, or ourselves, when we're trying to build our audiences, do things that are just plain stupid. You matter more than a like or a share. Thank you all for either watching live or watching this later on its tape delay. We will see you next week at around the same time, same channel.
Or maybe in person, actually, next week.
Yes, we will be in person next week, so we'll have to figure out how to use this tool from an in-person way.